I've been contacting different First Nations leaders, different chiefs, talking about partnering and working together.
Tonight, a historic signing between two nations in a cross-country trade agreement.
Simple life in a small community is sometimes hard to understand until you're actually in the community. So I think it's a great way of showing how Inuit live today.
A feature-length documentary about life in a small community in Nunavik. Tansin Edute Maktir Wheatley Nisigasun Opasquayak Oche. Welcome to APTN National News. The Mohawk community of Kahnawake in Quebec recently announced a cross-country trade agreement. It's with the Tsuut'ina First Nation in Alberta. As Savannah Craig reports, Kahnawake Grand Chief Cody Daibo calls this an historic signing.
We're going to bring it from 25% to 50% the tariffs on steel into the United States of America.
Prime Minister Mark Carney announced he will be removing some of Canada's retaliatory tariffs on the United States. Some First Nations are feeling the weight of the U.S. tariffs, but this Mohawk community is using the tariffs to strengthen nation-to-nation trading.
I've been contacting different First Nations leaders, different chiefs, talking about partnering and working together. Historically, this was all our territory.
Kahnawake Grand Chief Cody Daibo says the tariffs started these conversations. But the Grand Chief says the federal legislation, Bill C-5, fueled the fire to prioritize nation-to-nation trade deals.
These are our resources, and it's time that we start dealing and trading in our resources away from any Canadian interference.
Come and experience the story for yourself.
Now Kahnawake has a trade partnership with Tsuut'ina First Nation. Tsuut'ina is launching one of the largest First Nations developments in North America called Tracia. Tracia is a community that will include a mix of parks, residential, retail, and commercial spaces. The deal between Tsuut'ina and Kahnawake was struck last month after Kahnawake Chief Paul Rice, who handles the economic development portfolio, visited Tsuut'ina.
Tsuut'ina, they have other businesses.
Chief Rice is hoping Kahnawake will learn from Tsuut'ina's entrepreneurial expertise.
In Kahnawake, we have hundreds of entrepreneurs, develop a lot of products. Some of them are selling them online. As a tangible example, the Tracia development has commercial availability. So even getting our products from east to west, and then vice versa, west to east. We're located 15 minutes from Montreal, they're 15 minutes from Calgary. So an exchange of products, opening new markets is good for those entrepreneurs.
He says Kahnawake is potentially looking into importing natural gas from Tsuut'ina to diversify Kahnawake's energy supply.
We're seeing the ramping up of mega projects.
Indigenous trade expert Wayne Garnons-Williams says an agreement like this is important to prevent trade between Indigenous nations from being threatened by another government power.
Anything can be threatened, but the question is the assertion of that right in Canada, it's never been extinguished, expressly extinguished, and we just need to assert it more by building our own system. And it's important that we build our own system because our version of how we view trade and commerce is different than the European-based system that's dominating the world.
He says all First Nations internationally should be writing trade agreements to assert their economic rights, not just domestic agreements.
No court has ever expressly extinguished Indigenous economic rights. We have that. It is recognized, and we just need to assert it more by building our own system.
Professor David Carrier-Acko encourages Indigenous people on both sides of the U.S.-Canada border to develop a trade coalition.
The way Indigenous people have to react is to collectively come together to protect their interests.
He runs the Indigenous Business Management program at McGill University and a consulting firm called Acosys. His PhD focuses on economic reconciliation. But in order for a cross-border trade agreement to be established, Carrier-Acko says Canada needs to uphold the Jay Treaty.
When you look at it from the British point of view, that ratification was to prevent the American economy from growing. Now you have Trump, who doesn't want the Canadian economy to grow. So ratify it. In many ways, the Jay Treaty will provide a competitive advantage to Canada in many ways, and to reestablish that nation-to-nation relationship.
Until this is established, the Grand Chief says he is continuing to reach out to other nations to establish more trade agreements. Savannah Craig, APTN National News, Kahnawake, Mohawk Territory.
Thanks, Savannah. A Winnipeg organization says a street count has revealed the highest number of people experiencing homelessness in the city since it began tracking the numbers in 2015. And Homelessness Winnipeg says a point-in-time census conducted on November 5th, 2024 identified 2,469 unhoused individuals. Indigenous peoples made up 80% of those who experienced homelessness on that day. The organization says it's a powerful reminder of ongoing systemic inequities. And Homelessness Winnipeg says some of the main pathways that led to people being homeless were the justice system, the healthcare system, and the child welfare system. 49% of those on the street said they were involved in the child welfare system. The Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs says the figures tell a very sad story of dispossession, displacement, and disconnection. The AMC says this is not just a housing crisis, it is the direct result of generations of colonial policies. And Homelessness Winnipeg is holding a press conference to discuss the findings on Thursday. It's calling for affordable housing, income supports, and culturally relevant services. Today at the Manitoba Legislature, a tree planting ceremony for Tracia's Trust took place. Tracia's Trust is Manitoba's strategy that responds to sexual exploitation of children and youth. Today, the province announced $150,000 to support Tracia's Trust 12 regional teams that do vital work in communities to address sexual exploitation and trafficking. 14-year-old Tracia Owen died by suicide in 2005. She had been in and out of foster care since she was an infant. Community gathered today to plant the tree and to honor her life and impact.
There is no greater loss than that of a child. And even after 20 years, I know her absence is still deeply felt. Tracia's story has inspired meaningful reforms in Manitoba's child welfare and justice system. Her legacy lives on in the continuing work to protect vulnerable youth across the province. This tree will stand in memory of Tracia's life and impact while representing the strength, security, and peace for all who visit this spot.
It's really difficult sometimes to share words on a history that's very painful. But at the same time, that we come together to work with that memory and the teachings that was left behind by this beautiful person.
We are looking forward to releasing our report and continuing the amazing work being done through the Tracia's Trust strategy. Since 2008, the changes enacted in Tracia's name have positively impacted on countless lives. It is for this reason we gather here today to plant this tree, which pays tribute to Tracia's enduring legacy.
A man who has been missing in Pimicikamak Cree Nation in northern Manitoba since October 4th has been found deceased. 37-year-old Jeffrey Kalomea from Pimicikamak did not return home on August 4th, and Cross Lake RCMP said he was last seen in the community on August 10th. Family then reported him missing on August 17th. RCMP now say Kalomea was located deceased in a marshy area known as Nakao Bay near Pimicikamak. The investigation continues this week pending the results of an autopsy. Time for a quick break. When we return, we take you to the Montreal International Film Festival. Jessica. Pitigua. Last summer, a landslide fully blocked the Chilcotin River in northern BC during the key migratory period for sockeye and Chinook salmon. Now, a high-risk tension crack has appeared in the same location, and the community has issued a public warning. Here to talk more about this, Chief Roger Williams from the Chilcotin Nation. Thanks for joining us, Chief William. In the summer of 2024, a landslide impacted returning sockeye and Chinook salmon to your area. What effects did this have on the community?
A lot of our salmon was already going to be impacted from the big bar slide 4 years prior. So, and with this big slide, it cut that in half again. So it's like a catastrophe. It's huge. It had long-term effects, and the salmon, about 50% made it up. Our task force we put together at the nation level is followed by even the Pacific Salmon Commission, and they get in all the information from our nation task force about the impact about the Chilcotin River, which comes out of the Aboriginal tidal land, and the salmon spawn in Aboriginal tidal land. So it's Chilcotin means we're the river people, Chilcotin, and we really depend on the river, on the salmon.
In a recent press release from the nation, a high-risk tension crack has been spotted in the area. What effects could this have?
It could have huge effects, huge impacts. It'll be much like the big bar, and it's going to stop river again. Like last year, it stopped it for almost 6 days, and this one could be more. There's canyons that it's going through, and it's going to be, the water, the river will be held back for a longer period of time. And then the impact from last year, all these sediments, some of that is still coming down, is still affecting the salmon. So you get the second one, and it's going to be another big hit. And this affects other areas downriver into the Fraser River, which we call Taco.
You mentioned this briefly, but if there's another blockage this year, how will this impact the salmon next season?
Well, it's a 4-year cycle. So the 2024, we'll see the impacts in 2028. We're monitoring. We have sonars. We have different equipment using the satellite as well, just to see where they are and what's going on. And we want to try and mitigate as much as possible. So this year, you will see the impact in 4 years from now. So that would be 2029. So that's when the next 4 years will be the impact. So, but it also slides into, we have 4 different cycles that the salmon that come up the river, and they impact the next year's cycle as well.
An emergency salmon task force was created last summer for issues like this. How did that come about?
Well, that was, we have one of a very strong team, fisheries teams, we have biologists, and that team from the leadership got together, and with the impact, especially with last year's slide, and the impact there blocking the river for almost 6 days. With that, we also been meeting the Salmon Commission, Pacific Salmon Commission, several times over the past few years. So having those connections, and the tidal wind, the Aboriginal tidal wind we won back in 2014, we've been meeting federal and provincial ministers and governments, and we've always had concerns dealing with our salmon coming up the Chilcotin River, the Fraser. So our team's been on this for years, and we've been working with DFO and other neighboring First Nations, and trying to make sure that the salmon make it back up to the spawning grounds. When we fish, when we do the fishing, it does not really impact the numbers, but what happens out when it goes down to the ocean and back, that's where the impact happens. And that's what we're doing, is communicating, working with government, industries, and just seeing what's out there and seeing what we could do to lessen the impact.
Thank you for your time today, Chief William.
Thank you. You're welcome.
The world premiere of the feature-length documentary Inukjuak took place at the Montreal International Film Festival last week. Nouvelle's host, producer Kim Sullivan has the story.
Filmed in the spring of 2022 in Inukjuak, Nunavik, the film presents a double perspective on the North and Inuit society in the 2020s.
When it started appearing, like it brought up maybe flashbacks.
Inukjuak resident and co-director Gila Yemaluk wanted to celebrate the resilience of her people by looking back on the community's last 100 years. A social worker by trade, she wanted above all to help young people understand the traumas of the past as well as the behaviors of their parents in order to begin a process of healing.
They don't understand about the relocation and residential school survivors. So it's because I didn't know about it too growing up. We learned that very late. It's for them to understand why they act the way they act. So they won't feel how I feel growing up.
When I pull this, the arrow would go.
The documentary offers an intimate look at the small community of Inukjuak and the daily lives of its members.
Spending time with them out on the land, they share their stories.
Some even actively participated, such as Tommy Palliser, who worked as a local producer.
It's great to tell our story, coming from the community where, we like to share our way of living, Simple life in a small community is sometimes hard to understand until you're actually in the community. So I think it's a great way of showing how Inuit live today.
He adds that this documentary is not just a film, but a cultural bridge between the South and the North and an invitation to open dialogue with Indigenous peoples.
The Inuit in Canada, are a big part of the country as well. I think we're bridging the gap between the South and the North through these documentaries, and I think these documentaries are just that. They're storytelling. To explain, how we live. To better understand, better communicate with each other.
And just like the poetic tone that this documentary gives to the community of Inukjuak, Tommy Palliser continues by saying that this communication can only lead to good things.
As long as we understand and keep sharing, the world's going to be a lot better.
Kim Sullivan and Jonah Aspler, APTN National News, Montreal.
One last break here. We hear from Bruce De La Cruz in Yellowknife as he speaks to some entrepreneurs in the North when we come back. Tawau, welcome back. Time now for our photo of the day. A stunning evening view along Playgreen Lake in Norway House, Cree Nation. Thanks to Toby Wilson for submitting the amazing photo. If you have a photo to share, be sure to send your photos to share@aptn.ca for the chance to be our next photo of the day. Now let's take a look at tomorrow's weather forecast. Starting in the east, St. John's 21, Fredericton 25. Kuujjuaq 17, Happy Valley Goose Bay also 17. Quebec City 17, Val-d'Or 10. Sault Ste. Marie 15, Sarnia 20. Big Trout Lake 13, Thunder Bay 18. Churchill 20, Norway House 19. Gimli 21, Brandon 28. North Battleford 31, Yorkton 28. Uranium City 25, Buffalo Narrows 30. Grand Prairie 32, Fort McMurray 33. Edmonton 33, Lethbridge 27. Kamloops 35, Vancouver 25. Smithers 28, Prince George 31. Old Crow 17, Whitehorse 22. Norman Wells 26, Fort Simpson 29. Inuvik 15, Fort McPherson 12 degrees. Cambridge Bay 10, Chesterfield 18. Arctic Bay 0, Iqaluit 7. This week, the Empowering Innovation Spirit Conference in Yellowknife is bringing together Northern Indigenous entrepreneurs from across Canada and other northern parts of the world. Our video journalist Bruce Dela Cruz was on the ground to capture this celebration of Northern community and has more in this report.
Over 150 people are at the Explorer Hotel in Yellowknife this week for the Empowering Innovation Spirit Conference. Organized by EntrepreNorth, a project started in 2017 to help Northern Indigenous entrepreneurs grow their businesses, the conference is the first of its kind.
This is a conference that has been an idea in our minds for years because we recognize that while there are lots of conferences that happen in the north, there's nothing that has specifically been dedicated to Indigenous entrepreneurship and innovation.
Zena Cohen, current co-director of EntrepreNorth, explains how EntrepreNorth came from humble beginnings.
One of the things that was identified was a lack of culturally relevant resources and supports for community members who were wanting to start or grow a business. What's been really great over the last couple of years is to see this movement of Indigenous entrepreneurship growing across Turtle Island, but we recognize that there was like a real need for there to be like place-based in the north supports for entrepreneurs.
Nooks Lindell, an Inuk artist from Arviat Nunavut, was part of the first cohort of entrepreneurs, facilitated by EntrepreNorth. Today, he was a panelist discussing the community impact of entrepreneurship. Talking to APTN News, he says that the chance to network during this conference is what he's looking forward to the most.
It's really exciting because I know a lot of these people through like social media, so actually getting to meet them is probably one of the best parts, and see if there's some collaboration that can happen.
Bernice Kutu Clark, born and raised in Iqaluit Nunavut, is the founder of Wazo Soap, which she describes as Nunavut in a bar. Clark led one of the opening ceremonies of the conference, which she called the lighting of the Kulduk. She told us the importance of why sustaining a northern economy is important for Indigenous people to maintain their own identities.
For my reason of becoming an entrepreneur, it was so that I am comfortable within myself to be who I am and who I always was. I have grown so much as an entrepreneur. And now I am economically independent. And I show Inuit, other Indigenous, you too can. in your life, in your way.
And that was part one of our coverage of the Empowering Innovation Spirit Conference organized by Entrepreneurship. Stay tuned for part two as we wrap up the conference and see what else the conference has in store. Bruce de la Cruz, APTN National News, Yellowknife.
And that's all the time we have for your APTN National News for this Wednesday. We made it halfway through the week together. Creason is back tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern. I'm TR Wheatley. It's been a pleasure to be here with you. From all of us at APTN, Hegase, Gitam, Kawapamitinanaw.